Greetings, upstanders. Dr. O here, and I've been paying a good amount of attention to the tension, debate, however you want to call it, between a Native Land Pod and the Joe Budden podcast, and the debate over Mark Lamont Hill and black intellectuals being on the proper platforms and all of this other type of stuff. I've been paying attention to what Tiffany Cross has said. I watched a conversation with Angela Rye with the Native Land Pod team and Charlemagne. I watched Joe Budden's response to some of this as well, and so I wanted to weigh in and share my thoughts on it. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about the Joe Budden podcast because I do not watch or listen to the Joe Budden podcast. Like several people out there, I've seen viral clips and other things like that. I don't know enough about the podcast to go in on that aspect of it. So I'm not going to do that. I definitely listen to Native Land Pod, and I ride with them regularly. So, and historically, I followed more of their work. Even including their new Beyonce, on the show, Bakari Sellers. And if you don't understand that, you got to watch the show to understand or listen. But here's my thing: there was something that Joe Budden did say that I did see in his response to Angela Rye. That's what led me to open up this camera today. And that thing was, he said he hasn't, I'm paraphrasing, he hasn't said a damn thing about, Angela Rye or any of these guys in 25 years, and he doesn't give a damn about what they do over there. And that's where my main problem comes in. I'm not here for the conversation about who's intellectual, who's not, who should go on which show, and who's not, who shouldn't. But what folks do at the Native Land Pod in terms of their individual careers, Tiffany Cross, Andrew Gillum, now Bakari Sellers, and of course Angela Rye, has been about fighting to empower Black America. Whether you like them or not, whether you love what they say or not, that has been their goal. Whether you like one or the other on the team or whatever, that has been their goal. And some of the things that I've seen when I've watched some of the critique of what Native Land Pod said about Joe Budden is like, how could you disrespect a man that has that big of a following, and that big of an audience? I believe that his podcast has about like almost 1.6 million subscribers and the like. And they're like, people say you should be more respectful of the people who follow that and everything. And I'm like, followers and being an influencer does not, and this is in general, does not equal leadership, right? And one of my problems that I have with a lot of these Black run podcasts in general is that they are all of them, and they may be like top 10, top 100 or whatever, but they're all doing sports and music and pop culture stuff for the most part. Roland Martin's I'm proud to be part of the Black Star Network, and be on the show Monday night panels and host sometimes. He is the only Black news show that has cracked the top 100 of podcasts, like of podcasts, period. Like, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. I'm on the show, so Roland talks about it often. Like, all of the other Black shows that make it into like that top 100, and I think Roland has gotten even higher on the ranks in recent weeks, are entertainment and stuff. And so when I hear Joe Budden say he doesn't give a damn about what they're doing over there, what they're doing over there is doing work to make sure that Black people can still be empowered in this country. And I don't just mean through the financial dollars that come through a podcast or that come through, having a music career and the like. And so when I hear people talk about, and they have all of these followers. Stephen A. Smith has all of these followers. The Breakfast Club has all of these followers. I'm watching, the Breakfast Club interview with Andrew Young. It was great. It was powerful. That question that was asked about Malcolm X and Martin confirmed something I've been hearing about on the low for years about them actually knowing each other and meeting and stuff. So when people do right, I think it needs to be applauded and the like. But when I think about the Straight Shooter podcast of Stephen A. Smith, when I think about this Joe Budden podcast, when I think about the Breakfast Club, my question always is, and I don't have the numbers, but where is there political engagement that's coming from their audience? Does what they say turn into votes? I know for a fact that the people who are involved in Native Land podcasts, who watch and listen and support, are voters, right? So when I remember a clip I saw with Tupac years ago, and I believe he was standing next to Snoop, and I may get the number wrong about out, but I believe he said something to the effect. But what he said is accurate in terms of what I'm about to mention. He said, I sold like 5 million albums. Again, correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. And he said, what if I turned that into 5 million votes? Right? This is a guy who was at the height of not even just the entertainment world. At the time of Tupac's killing, I don't believe there was a black man in America who was more influential than Tupac at the time of his killing. I don't even think, Minister Farrakhan, like in terms of influence, not leadership, but in terms of influence. And when you hear conversations that Nas said he had with him before he died, he was talking about, changing the direction, changing things up. But this was a man who was seeing how he can use his entertainment space to mobilize people. And I don't see that from these podcasters and YouTubers who have millions of followers. So when I hear Joe Budden say that he doesn't care about what Angela and them talk about over there, that's problematic to me. That's problematic to me because I'm like, we need to be building more politically and economically together. And one of the things I respect about Angela Ryan, she's like, I may have issues with this person or that person, but she continually makes it clear that we got bigger fish to fry. And so it was nothing for her in terms of who she is to apologize for the way that the title was portrayed and all of that, and making it look like Joe Budden's the problem, because for her it's not on message and not on mission for what we need to happen right now. But large numbers doesn't equal a change in our politics. Where's the mobilization? I'm going to assume that some of the people who are out there listening to Joe Budden right now may be about to lose some SNAP benefits. Some people who are listening to Joe Budden right now might be in a food line right now. Some people who listen to Joe Budden might be about to lose their health care. The things that are talked about on Native Land Pod, the things that are talked about on the Black Star Network, who's also approaching Roland Martin, approaching close to 2 million followers. So, right now he has more numbers than many of these guys out there, including Stephen A. Smith, which shows that there is an interest for this type of stuff. And so my thing is not to tear down Joe Budden. I'm going off of that comment that was made. My point is, and even if people don't, I've had my issues with Charlemagne and some of the things that he puts out there. But I like what he talks about when he says in terms of calling people out, calling people in, the importance of being able to have the discussion respectfully, because we're supposed to understand that we're all in this together. Like, I'm here for that type of stuff. But these guys who are running these sports podcasts and these music podcasts and stuff, yeah, they got tons of followers, but what are they doing? And I'm asking honestly, because I do not know. I don't watch or follow them like that. What are they doing to empower Black people beyond empowering in their own pockets? And that's where my problem comes in. I mentioned Tupac. A lot of the rappers I came up listening to, they would talk about the political issues going on at the time by name. They would mention Clinton. They would mention Bush. They would mention whatever. I mean, you can see like 16-year-old Tupac talking about Trump. These guys now, like the Kendrick Lamars of the world, the J. Cole's of the world, I don't know all of their music, but I hear them talking about like racism and that type of stuff, which is important, police brutality and all that, which is important. But a lot of these guys, in a lot of their hits and stuff, I don't hear them mention like Trump by name. And some have, maybe not a J. Cole. I don't know his official music, but like Kendrick Lamar, is put out as the guy who's like the revolutionary rapper of the day. But I don't see him down in LA, for the ICE raids. Tupac was out in the LA riots, so was like Ice Cube, back in those days. I see these guys talking about issues, but not people. And so I don't see the musicians, and again, I'm fully open to being corrected if I'm wrong. I don't see the musicians leading the way. And I don't see these podcasters and these guys leading the way. And we need to figure out some way to come together so we can start moving the needle politically. Shannon Sharp, do the Sharp, do the Shake Club, Shay people get out and vote? Do they mobilize? I don't know. I can't speak to that. But what I do know is that in the Roland Martin spaces, in the Sirius XM spaces, with the Karen Hunters and the like, people are out there getting out to mobilize and vote. And I hope that with what Joe Budden is doing, that at some point that he will start to move towards, if he's not, all I'm saying is that he doesn't care what they're doing over there. I hope that in his space he is finding ways. I know Mark Lamont Hill is on there and all of the other type of stuff. Sometimes it seems like it's more of a contrarian point of view on different things. And if the Joe Budden people are out there mobilizing people to get out there in the political space, then they should be partnering more with Native Land Pod and people who have that political experience. Andrew Gillen's political experience. Angela Rice's organizing experience. Tiffany Cross's journalistic experience. Bakari Sellers' political experience. They should be coming together. Because what's coming up in 2026, what's coming up in 2028, it's affecting all of us. It's affecting all of us. And they could do better by figuring out ways to work together. And so those are my takeaways. Numbers of people who follow don't mean that people shouldn't get a certain level of critique. These sports and music and pop culture oriented podcasts, yeah, you might get top billing in terms of numbers and views and all of that other type of stuff, but what needle are you moving? Maybe you're not talking about protesting and like on there, but can we talk about voting? I mean, Bayard Rustin said it's like when you have the vote, you don't even need to protest. And so if they're doing that on that podcast, I think it's great. But if they're not, they need to. I think of like the Breakfast Club and all of that. This is the must go to place for Gavin Newsom and Kamala and all these other people. They got to be there. The Zorons got to be there. Is it turning into mobilization? Is somebody doing the stats? Does somebody have the numbers on that? Because that's important as well. So I can go on. I don't want to be too repetitive right now, but please let me know what y'all think. Hit that like, hit subscribe, share this. Like I said, I'm here for the conversation. I'm not here for the condemnation as it relates to what I'm talking about right now. But I believe that we need to do better. We need to figure out ways to come together. I feel like what Native Land Pod is doing that. And I don't feel like and I feel like Charlemagne getting involved in the conversation the way he did. I can talk about some nuanced issues I had here and there. I think it's important. It was great to see, Angela Rye and Joe Budden actually have a conversation. Maybe they're talking offline, but those are the types of things that I think we need to happen to move the ball forward. All right, y'all. Take care. Peace.